Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Backstage Spotlight. Today I am with John Robyns. Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Good. Thank you so much for joining me. Now, I wanted to invite you on after the press release of The Great Gatsby musical, which you are going to be appearing in at the London Coliseum in April. So, would you like to tell us a bit about your role in The Great Gatsby?
Sure. I'm going to be playing Tom Buchanan, and for those that don't know the story, there's a central love story between Jay Gatsby and Daisy, and I played Daisy's husband. So, from the word husband, you can already see it's quite complicated. Um, Gatsby and Daisy were in love before Daisy married my character Tom, and he's not the ideal husband. He has many affairs and is sort of a brute and is very entitled and comes from money and looks down on those who don't. And so I'm looking forward to getting in there and playing this guy because playing baddies is always way more fun than playing goodies.
Oh, brilliant. It sounds like such a fun show to be a part of, and we're all very excited to come and see it in April. But let's take it back to before you even knew you wanted to perform as a career. How did it all start out for you? Did you attend drama classes when you were younger? When was that like realization that you really enjoyed it?
I think mine's a pretty standard, well-worn path. It was the sort of thing that I knew I was good at and probably better at than the average people, the average level of the people around me. And that was a nice revelation to me at the time. And as someone who craves attention, it was always nice to sort of be good at something that everyone was going to give me attention for. Um, I went to loads of drama clubs and opera clubs, and I'd like to say dance, but I didn't dance at all until I was 18 and went to drama school, and it shows. Um, but just Andram stuff, school stuff, and then I was having singing lessons from the age of 11, and I was going to be a chorister. I was going to go to um, one of the Oxbridge colleges and study, be part of a chorister there, but I got a scholarship at at Mountview, and that was the more affordable and more preferable and seemed less work option. Um, I'm always after the easiest way, but it was great fun. And Mountview sort of convinced me that it was possible to do this for a career because growing up, you don't quite realize that musical theatre can be a sustainable career choice as a teenager. Maybe more so teenagers do now because of the access they have to the internet, which makes you sound about 150, but there wasn't the internet when I was a teenager. Certainly not in the form it is now. Um, I went to drum school and it all sort of took off from there.
Nice. So for those people who, are at school, and I suppose, as you said with the internet, it is different now. But when you were at school and your peers might not have necessarily wanted to go down the performance path, what was that like moment when you realized like I want to actually audition for drama school instead of do like a core subject? How did you figure that path out with schools not being like as switched on to the performance industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do remember talking to careers advisors at school when I was about 15 or 16, and I'd known that I wanted to do this from the age of 10, 11. So I always had a thing, I had a focus, an extracurricular focus through school, which was performing arts. And when I spoke to the careers advisor, they said, "Yes, I know you want to be an actor, but what else could you do?" And I went, "Nothing. I want to be an actor." And they went, "Yes, I know you want to be an actor, but what else could you do?" And we had just this back and forth, and there was nothing else I particularly wanted to do. I have since discovered that I really enjoy teaching, but I enjoy teaching this. So
Yeah.
it's still involved in this. And I now run a sort of parallel career as a drama tutor and director, and that's really fulfilling. I love doing that. Um, but yeah, I I like to think, and this is a very a dramatic, heightened way of thinking about it, but we work in theatre, so we can get away with it. It sort of chooses you rather than you choose it. It's like you don't have a choice. It's something that is needs to be part of you, and if you're not doing it, as COVID proved, it does affect who you are, and that's something that I discovered when I wasn't allowed to do it anymore. When COVID came in and we all had to sit in our homes for a year and a bit. But yeah, it's definitely something that chooses you rather than you choosing it. I mean, why would you choose this? Why it's so you, you've got no control over your career. You've got no guaranteed money. You've got you lose friends as quickly as you make them, and you might not see them. And it's weird. It's a weird world. But why would you choose it? It chooses you.
That's hilarious. So let's talk about COVID. How did that impact you, and what kind of hobbies did you pick up along the way? Because I've spoken to a lot of performers, and it all kind of, went dark for a year and a bit. So how was that time for you?
Well, if I just ignored the fact that I didn't have any money, it was actually really wonderful. It was the most time I'd ever spent with my family. It's the most time I'd ever spent with my kids. It was we'd just moved house, so it was we could do things around the house without the interruption of having to go to work. We explored the new place that we live, so it was actually really enjoyable. I didn't sing for a good month and a half, and I didn't realize why I was getting so tense. And then my wife suggested, "Why don't you have a really bloody good sing?" And I was like, "Well, why?" And she said, "Just trust me, because she knows me better than I know myself." So she and the kids went out, and I had a good sing for an hour. And I say an hour, I sang for about 3 minutes and burst into tears because you don't realize that that's your emotional trigger release when you're an artist. Doing your art is like an emotional release valve for you. Um, and I didn't realize that it wasn't being served properly. Um, so that was quite something. I do remember sort of bursting into tears and going, "What's happening to me? I'm broken." But it turns out that it's a positive thing. So that was nice to discover. In terms of hobbies, we got a dog. We were one of
Oh,
those families that got a Labrador, and they take a lot of exercise and working. And he was a puppy, and now he's enormous. Um, but that was a big shift in my life. Being a dog owner is like having a perpetual toddler forever. Um, so that was something. But the main thing was writing. My uh, writing partner, Christopher J. Orton, and I completed musical called Then, Now and Next that got produced in 2023 at the Southwark Playhouse. But we spent most of 2020 writing it and rewriting it, and then 2021 the same and developing it. And the end of 21 we had a showcase, and then spent 22 sort of re-workshopping it and redoing. And then at the end of 2022, Paul Virides, the producer that produced the show, came on board and said, "Well, I think I can get you a run at the Southwark Playhouse." And that happened in the summer of 23. So I guess writing, I mean, I've always been a writer, but I had the opportunity to take it a bit more seriously during the COVID time. The COVID time makes it sound like a mystical time. It wasn't. But so that was the thing that I think I picked up and enjoyed most. But it was as much out of necessity for somewhere to put your artistry as it was just an enjoyable experience. What did you do during the COVID break?
oh gosh, I was the world's best sunbather. I don't know why the weather was so
That's
good.
quite a title.
You look out the window now and you wake up to frost and snow. And back then in COVID times, I mean, it was like summer in March. It was so nice. It was so nice. So that's what I was doing. And I
Mm,
was at school, so
it was.
I had Zoom lessons, which was interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, I know. So I forget that I'm 20 years older than you. Yeah, it must have been very difficult for students at that time. I mean, we obviously my kids had the same, but they were at primary school, and so we just had to teach them about the rain cycle, which I can teach you really well because I taught three times.
That's
Um, but yeah, it was a funny old time. I mean, work-wise, I was incredibly lucky that when COVID hit in March, God, that's 5 years ago now, isn't it? March 20. Um, that I was already in one of the most stable shows and one of the most guaranteed jobs that exist. Playing Valjean in Les Mis in the West End, as I was at the time, is probably the most guaranteed gig in London.
yeah.
And Cameron McIntosh and his company, the staff there, looked after us brilliantly and were supportive and communicative. And having spoken to them since it broke, they all worked so hard to tie up the loose ends that they could and then get it back on as quickly as possible. And when we came back in the summer of 21 with the Lamis concert,
I
um,
watched that
with
concert.
all the separation and all the testing and all it was, you came to that, did you?
Yeah, yeah, I came to that concert.
Were you at that first concert?
Not the first one, not the first one. Like
That is a noise I will never ever forget.
it wasn't the first one out of COVID. It was the one that was. It was
No, that is
a few months on, but yeah, that concert.
Now, that was one of the things I'm proudest of in my career because you could feel the importance of what you do. It's very easy when you are a working actor to sort of forget how important what you do is to people because A, you do it every day and it's a job. B, it's just another show in inverted commas, and you're like, oh, I'll do another show. Great, that's fun. Those concerts in the summer of 21 was how important it is. And like I said earlier, the trigger release for the emotional state of people for performers is doing it, but for audiences is watching it. So, I've never felt closer to an audience than doing those concerts. And it was incredibly special. And I'm really proud and glad and lucky that I got to be part of that.
Yeah, what a fantastic company to experience coming out of lockdown with. It was fantastic. I want to ask you, as a father, how do you nurture your children around the musical theatre industry? Do they enjoy it? Do they come and watch you? What is that like in your family?
My I have one teenage and one nearly teenage kid. My daughter is very much into it and would like to do it as a career. My son is not that bothered about it. So my daughter constantly wants to come to events and be part of it, and has sat backstage when I was doing West End concert gigs and came with me to the Gatsby launch, and everyone thought she was my PA, which was very funny. Um, my my son is not that bothered. I think they're both very have become very aware in the last couple of years that I do something that interacts with the general public, and therefore there is and I say this as humbly as possible, a minute amount of fame that comes with it, in that musical theatre audiences might know my name, maybe. Like it's teeny, it's 0.0001%. Um, but we work in the public arena, so there is a chance that the public know who you are, and I think that has been something that they've come to terms with in the last couple of years. How do I nurture them with it? Well, I think it has a lot of power and worth and value in society, obviously, because it's what I do for a living. So I've tried to instill that in them and make them realize that that is that is important and clear to them. But the thing that I like most most about working in theatre is the teamwork element of it. You know, everybody has a different job, and everyone's job is to be respected, and um, everybody's contribution to whatever production you're doing is as important as everyone else's, and so and you all rely on each other, and that is a transferable mentality between theatre and life. So I try and instill that in them and show them that whenever they've seen me work.
Yeah, that's really lovely for them to grow up around that. And it's something that probably their friends aren't experiencing with their parents. So it's really special. I wanted to ask you now about your writing because I was very intrigued about the show you wrote, like co-wrote in lockdown. And I wanted to ask you the process of writing and how you start. Like, what are the steps to writing a musical on your in your perspective?
It's long and painful, and I don't know why I do it. It's it's torturous, and yeah. Um, well, the steps are get an idea, and then if the idea is brand new, develop it as much as you like. If the idea is not brand new, and then you wrangle with the people that had the idea first to see if you're allowed to write a musical around it. The musical that we are uh, currently talking about writing is not an original idea by us. It's based on source material, which I can't talk about legally. But that's been a very different process than something like Then Now Next. That was a brand new story, a brand new music. We wrote every word and every note came from our brains. Um, so that was incredibly freeing. Um, and it was interesting to see a piece of theatre from a completely different perspective, because obviously as an actor, when you show up to a play or a musical, it's already been done. You just stand where you're told to stand, and say what you get told to say, and in the way that you think you should do it, and the director thinks you should do it, and the musical director thinks you should do it, and the choreographer thinks you should do it, and sometimes the producer and the lighting director and the sound guys and the right. So, like I said earlier, it's the teamwork element. Um, but writing it, none of that exists yet. So, on the one hand, what the hell do we do? And on the other hand, great, we can do anything we want. Um, so that was very interesting. When once the production of Then Now Next went into rehearsals, it was quite clear to me that as the writer in the room, rather than the actor in the room, no one wants you there, because you are the person that caused all the problems that they're having to solve. Like, what the hell is this character thinking at this point? And obviously, I know because I wrote it, but they don't know yet. So they're having to sort of dig around. And having been the actor in that process, I understand what it is to have to dig around in a story to figure it out. But yeah, everyone's looking at you like, why did you write this? You absolute. And it's, I don't know if this is a sweary podcast or not, but I'm going to assume it's not, so I won't. Um, so it's very interesting that no one really wants you in the room. And having discovered that the hard way, it was a learning experience for me. But I absolutely love it, and uh, I'm looking forward to doing more for the rest of my life. Whether the stuff gets produced or not, the fun bit for me is working with Chris Kit, my co-writer, and us bouncing ideas off each other. That's the fun bit. That's the creative bit. I mean, the difference between writing and acting is that writing is creative and acting is interpretive, because someone's already created it for you. You're not creating it. You are being the voice, the face, the eyes, the body of this character that someone else created. So you are interpreting something, and it's the writing process has also helped me bring into focus how I act, because, like I said, I'm not making it up unless it's an improvised piece, in which case I am making it up, but that's unusual and probably not very entertaining. So yeah, it's really helped me differentiate the process.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great way to put it, actually, when you say it like that, the interpretive and then the creative side of things. I really like that. Before we wrap things up, I want to talk about auditions quickly. What is your audition process in terms of getting material from going into the room? How do you prepare for an audition?
Well, that process has changed throughout my career. When I started, obviously, no one knows who you are, and you have to have a wide, be as wide a what we call repertoire. So as many songs as you can for auditions as possible, so that you can turn your hand to as many different styles as possible, which gives you a better chance of getting employed. Um, these days, it's unusual or rare that I take in my own song to sing for people because my CV says that I can sing. Um, when you are starting out, they don't know you. They don't know your voice. They don't know your way. They don't know your energy. They don't know how you approach the work. So it's completely fair that they would want to find out who you are. Um, but musical theatre, especially, is quite a small corner of the performing arts industry. And so once you've been in it 3, 4, 5 years, you know most people. Once you've been in it 10 years, you know pretty much everyone except the new guys coming through. And then those guys, after 10 years, half of them fade away anyway. Um, there is a massive dropout rate with musical theatre. Uh, so these days, if I'm asked to go for an audition, they will usually send me a song or two or a piece of script, and I'll learn it as best I can. I think it's important to stress for anybody wanting to do this, who's listening to this podcast right now, wanting to be an actor, that auditions are not a test and they are not a memory test. They are not an exam. They are not there to challenge you to be the best. You have to think about auditions as an opportunity to give the people auditioning you what they want. And they want you to be the person that they are looking for because auditions are boring and expensive and long and difficult for them and all of those things. And you are a specific product with what you do and who you are and how you approach stuff. And you should never try and be anything other than who you are. Be the best version of what you are, but trying to fit into what you think they want will actually stop you getting more jobs than it will get you because you're not being the authentic version of your product. And going in and being, this is how I approach it, this is what I want to do with it, this is what I think. If you happen to match what they want, brilliant. If you don't match what they want, you're never going to get that job no matter how good you are. So it's not worth trying to stress yourself out about what is it they want? How can I do this the way they want it? Just do what you think. And if that matches, brilliant. When I teach, I have this, I'm sure, very cliched saying, which is auditions are not about ability, they're about suitability. So if I am auditioning for a new musical and there isn't a precedent set for 40 years of guys that have done it before me, like Phantom of Valjean, they don't have a set idea of it. It's more likely that they're going to be able to mold it around the guys that they meet, um, which is great fun because then you have more creative and interpretive input. If it's Valjean and it's Phantom, they know what they want. And if it's not you, don't worry about it because it's never going to be you. If it is you, great, try your best. And I really like auditioning. A lot of actors hate it, but I tend to, and this I guess comes from experience and confidence, but I tend to view it as a pre-rehearsal rehearsal, because I'm going to do what I think I would do with it. And that's not to say that if the director asks you to do it a different way, you can't then be malleable enough to do it a different way. But yeah, I've got to be me, as the song goes. I am what I am. So I think auditions are more about a collaboration in the room, I mean, I auditioned for a tour of a musical recently that Nikolai Foster was directing, and I didn't get that job, but we spent 20 minutes discussing the play, discussing the character, going over the material, doing it different ways. And it was as fulfilling uh, an artistic experience as a performance because auditions are part of your job. They're not a weird bolt on to what you do. It is what you do. So you get the opportunity to go and do what you do. You're not getting paid for it, which is a shame, but you get the audition to go, get the opportunity to go and do a thing that you love. And that's how I think the best way to think about auditions is for people that are starting out.
That's great. I really like that perspective on it as someone who's been in the industry for a bit longer. It's really nice to hear that, they're not daunting and they can be. Um, it's like an opportunity to collaborate with the team, which is a really nice way to put it. Now we're coming to the end of the podcast, and the last question I always ask my guests is nominate someone to come and impart their knowledge. This can be someone you've worked with, this could be someone you've never met. They can be on stage or off stage, but you have to nominate someone, and I'll reach out to them in the hope that they will come and do an episode on this podcast. Who's that going to be?
Oh my goodness! Before I answer that, did anyone nominate me?
Um, no, unfortunately not. I nominated you.
That's fair. Okay. Well, I mean, I listened to a couple of the ones you did before and looked back at the people that you've had before, and it's been mainly performers. I don't know if that's exclusively what you do. I think it'd be very interesting to have some stage managers, some experienced stage managers or company managers on because the perspective of that would be great fun. I'm not going to name names because they will hurt me if they don't want to do it. I mean, the problem with interviewing non-performers is generally they don't like talking about what they do. They want to be backstage. That's the point. That's why they chose to be backstage. Um, but I mean, you can reach out to one of my massive inspirations in musical theatre, which was a guy who was the lead of the first job I had, which was John Briones, when I did the UK tour of Miss Saigon. That was my first big job out of college. And I used to stand in the wings and watch him perform this engineer role. And he was an original cast member of Miss Saigon back in 1889, and this was in 2004. So he'd been doing the show that long, and it was still like it was the first time he'd ever said those lines. So I studied him, absolutely stood in the wings and watched every scene, studied him, figured it out. And because I was understudying Chris in that gig, I got to go and act with him a couple of times. And then I'm sure he hated me and was very bored of me because I was a very precocious 21-year-old asking him about his craft. But I would ask him about how do you do this and how do you deliver that line and what are you thinking when you do this and is it different every night and blah 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 blah. Blah. So if you do get him on, you can pass him my apologies for bugging him to high hell with with artistic questions. But yeah, he's a massive inspiration for me. So maybe you can reach out to him. And both of his kids are actors as well.
Nice.
Um,
Yeah.
both of his kids are actors as well. So he can talk to you about bringing the next generation up.
I love that. Thank you so much, John. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Good luck with the Great Gatsby rehearsals. I hope that all goes very well and can't wait to see you on stage at the Coliseum very soon. To everyone listening, thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed and we'll see you next week. Thank you, John. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.